Hi everyone, I'm Yuri from Superdao. This is DAO Heroes, a YouTube channel about Web3, the future potential of those technologies, how they work today and where we can be tomorrow, and how we can transform every existing industry around us. Today, our guest is Andrey Doronichev from Duplicat, a new startup that right now is starting with identifying fraud on NFT marketplaces like OpenSea, but has a long-term vision for rethinking how IP management and property like copyrights are managed in Web3, and how we can not only fight the bad copying, but also encourage good remix and derivative work that takes original art and take it to the next level.
That's right. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Wonderful. So let's start with your personal background. You spent over a decade at Google, primarily at YouTube, and I understand that some of that kind of experience prepared you for your Web3 journey. And in particular, at YouTube, you paid a big attention on how creative work is reused, particularly music. So maybe let's start there.
Yeah, absolutely. I just got fortunate enough to observe a new content ecosystem be born from nothing to like a huge video streaming service and all the things that happened along the way. And it also started messy and scammy, and there was a lot of piracy and a lot of confusion. But over time, it changed the way people think about IP and right management, because essentially it enabled millions and millions of people around the world be creative and co-create and use each other's work and remix it and create new art from something that existed before.
Awesome. So YouTube policy, my understanding is like this. So if you sample a tiny bit of content, let's say a clip from a TV series or something, and that's not a primary piece of your content. So you have like a big episode where you basically quote like a 5 seconds from a TV show like Game of Thrones or something, then it's fine. If you recopy the whole musical track, or then you either taken down or you share the advertising revenue with the original artist. And so some artists can say no reuse, and some artists can say reuse with revenue sharing is okay. So what was the evolution? I know the keyword there is Content ID, which is the YouTube system for copyright management. Were there any kind of chapters of that where things are today, and do majority of musicians today allow kind of reuse of their music with the revenue share, or they prefer to kind of have a tight control?
Yeah, that's spot on. Content ID was the heart of this transformation. When YouTube started, we were just a bucket of videos in the sky that let anyone upload whatever and make it very easy to stream, right? And so first we got a bunch of skateboarding docs and stuff, but then soon enough we started getting copyrighted material uploaded to the site. And copyright owners like Saturday Night Live or Viacom or whatever were really unhappy about it. And we tried our best, just like everyone else, every marketplace in NFT space does right now. We tried our best to clean those up, like reviewing claims and whatnot. And then we tried to employ a community to do that. And then at some point, it gets so much content uploaded every minute that there is not enough humans in the world to review it. So that's when Content ID was born. That's a system, an AI, that literally watches every video and understands what's in it. And that is when things get interesting, because once you understand that this video, let's say, contains a piece of Star Wars, or this video contains the music from some famous artist, then you can offer those copyright owners a way to decide what to do with it. And some of them might pick to just disallow those things on the website. Some of them would pick to monetize it. But the great thing is that once there is this confidence that if whenever your material gets reused, remixed, or anyhow else appears on the website, you have a choice, and it will be correct. The value will be correctly attributed back to you. And I think that at YouTube, it happened within like one centralized service. And this time around, we have a chance to decentralize it and actually enable similar level of transparency across Web3 ecosystem.
And so now let's go to your current company, Duplicat. So it's a company that using AI, so artificial intelligence, to identify both original and derivative work in NFT marketplaces, and basically give a signal whether some collections are trying to appear as someone else's collection, like a stolen Bored Apes kind of clone type of collection. But again, the vision is today fight those direct kind of piracy by like pirated collection. So my understanding is like while you worked at Google, there was some like AI team that worked on content recognition algorithms before, not on Web3. And then recently you guys partner and formed this new company and start focusing on Web3. Maybe a quick story, origin story for Duplicat.
Yeah, not exactly like that. My team is not from Google. That's a separate AI team that worked on a similar domain. My two co-founders have been writing research papers on identifying derivative artworks, but indeed they were focused on more traditional Web2 e-commerce space. And it's just a lucky coincidence that we met, and I had this idea in mind of like figuring out how to enable transparency for content of NFTs. And they had this research. So we put our minds together, and those 4 years that they spent researching this problem turned out to produce a marvelous proprietary neural net that is extremely well applicable to the NFT space. And when we ran it on open data from blockchain, and try to identify how many derivative works are there, how many straight up duplicates are there, we just realized that it's extremely precise. We decided to build a company around it and a product that primarily is used by marketplaces right now, because for them, it can help solve trust and safety issues on their sites. But as you said, the longer term vision is way bigger. So my co-founders are Roman and Vlad. Both are AI professionals, researchers, and engineers.
My understanding is that you start with a traditionally formed company. You raise traditional venture capital. The long-term vision also to evolve to become a DAO or start a DAO next to Duplicate, become truly decentralized service for IP management in Web3. So there is basically a protocol, a common standard, how you claim your copyright over a certain character or image, how you track what kind of derivative work exists on chain with that work. And then you either say, no, I didn't give permission for that, or you say, this is fine, I permit that, but you need to pay me back some future revenues on your kind of reusable, like the future reuse of my work.
More or less like this, yes. So we started with like this bit that is centralized right now. And this is essentially a deep tech AI infrastructure that is just not viable to run on blockchain. But then all the decision making and the governance around it, as in how the rules are set, what is deemed original and what is deemed derivative, is supposed to be decentralized. We want to decentralize the blue check mark, and we want to design a protocol around it and create a DAO that would be governing it.
Wonderful. So the blue check started, my understanding, is primarily on Twitter, or at least was popularized on Twitter, and then it's now everywhere on TikTok, and there is a check mark on YouTube as well. And it is primarily to distinguish between the accounts, not the work, right? So in your case, you want the check mark or verification authenticity mark for individual work rather, or like a approved or like clean IP. So this is a little bit similar to authenticity tags on like sports kind of merch. Like if I buy like an NBA shirt, it will have somewhere in the bottom the like a special tag saying this is authentic, this is authorized by NBA and by a specific club and by Nike.
Exactly. We're working on authenticity problem for digital assets, period, right? Like that's the broadest way to describe what we do. Of course, you already have those verified blue check marks on OpenSea for collections. It's not just for creators, right? But the way those decisions are made is extremely centralized. And to me, it's crazy that we, as a community that tends to decentralize everything, put this power of deciding what's valid and what's not in the hands of a small group of people, great people, but still a small group of centralized group of people, rather than finding a way to figure out a community method of defining what's valid, what's authentic, and what is it derived.
Let's go a little bit into the future and see how things can go. So right now, one of the most popular type of NFT collections is profile picture collections, PFPs, typically 10,000, 5,000, somewhere in between. Those have like a different, variations. And so the idea here that we take an individual character, say an individual bored ape or individual, penguin or whatever, and then we make stories about that specific character, maybe some comic books, some movies, some games, some...
a rock band.
Yes, yes, exactly. And so you trace all the work that is based on the same character through some sort of protocol, and then you either share revenue, share permissions, who can do the derivative work and how that can be managed. What would be the interesting use cases? Who do you think should use that? Well, I'm thinking about myself. So we have actually a mascot for Superdao, my company. And should we use a protocol? Should we open up the reuse of our mascot and encourage the community to build on top of that? How do you see the future around those kind of stories?
I absolutely imagine the future where all the owners of any IP are motivated and incentivized to lead with generosity rather than with fear. As in, instead of hunting down people who did something to their work, instead, they employ kind of open source ethos, Creative Commons ethos, which is, hey, take my stuff, do something interesting with it. If something good comes out of it, please make sure that you reference back to me. And if there's a value that occurs, I get some royalties from it. But I'm encouraging you all to take my stuff and remix it and create more and more interesting things with it. So your mascot could end up in like physical merch, or it could end up in a game as a game character. It could end up as a rock band virtual music performer, just like it happened to Bored Apes. And that would be awesome, right? All you want to ensure is that when this rock band performs, there's some clear link back to your original character.
Once you have that protocol, we definitely want to put our mascot for the creative reuse. Should we put any limits? Like if some bad products advertised with our mascot, or the mascot is used by, I don't know, some unsympathetic cause, or promote products that maybe, designed to harm people in some way, financially maybe. What's the control measures beyond just share back some revenue to us?
Yeah, we've been discussing this just 2 weeks ago. Like, what are the protections for the brand, especially for a brand, for those creative reuse cases? It's likely that in your smart contract, you'd be able, as the IP owner, you'd be able to whitelist or blacklist certain collections. I don't think we would be able to create like policy enforcement, although not in the current version of technology, at least, which would be like a more generic way to describe which uses you permit. But I think as a very minimal, we'll start with, hey, anyone can do whatever they want with my mascot, but if I don't seriously don't like some use case, I can blacklist it, and that removes the right to do it.
Well, that now creates a lot of risk to the derivative artists, because they did something, maybe they put the heart and soul, like build a whole game or a rock band based on my mascot, and then they are totally under my control, where I say, oh, I actually don't like it, let me pull it out. So it looks like they need to have some certainty that they can use it as well. So
I mean, there's not going to be a perfect solution here. It's all about collaboration, right? Like assuming that whoever is putting heart and soul is, having the best intention, and they understand your policies. And it's also on you to communicate those policies to your community.
Yeah, that's I think where the progress can be made. Another one, it feels like maybe you can make a reputation system for reuse artists. So for example, if there is a reuse artist, like they only do mugs and t-shirts and games and whatnot, so they don't use my IP to promote products, so no marketing reuse, but rather than creative reuse, or like only physical product and merch reuse. So I would basically allow the merch reuse and maybe gaming reuse, but I would not allow marketing reuse. So I don't want my IP to be used to promote third-party products.
And I think over time, we start with something as simple and broad as just I can make a direct decision to blacklist something. But over time, as we see and as we learn, as we collect data of what are the common cases where people freak out, where things do not work for collaboration and whatnot, those can become more and more selected policies, checkboxes that you click and say, hey, I allow this for merch. I do not allow this for, I don't know, for porn movies. And you'd have more and more like a menu style selection of things you can offer to your community and those that you do not permit.
How far along is Duplicat? Have you guys already been operational in any marketplaces? Have you found any copycat collections? Have you helped put down, take down some of the kind of improper reuse of NFT art?
Oh yeah, we've been live for the last 2 months. We have our first large customer, a marketplace that is using us daily. We are going to announce more details over the next few weeks, but we are scanning over 2 terabytes of NFT assets per day at the moment.
Wow.
And we're identifying thousands of collections per day that are either straight up scam copies, stolen art, or some more interesting cases of derivatives, and some of them are really astounding. Like my favorite is Sideways CryptoPunks, where someone redrew every punk sideways, and they look exactly like this, but it's completely original art based on the same characters, right? I do love this stuff. And so we're seeing a lot of very interesting things. It just, right now, there is no meaningful way for anyone to get access to this data. And we are exactly here for that, right? Create this transparency for the community.
How can we accelerate this future? So how we convince the IP holders, the brands, the NFT creators to actually open up their collection for use, or even maybe individual NFT holders, because we know that individual Bored Apes, holders of individual NFT have full commercial rights for their individual characters, so they can actually open up for reuse their individual character without asking the parent company of Bored Apes collection. So who will be the first permissive kind of IP owner who will open up their IP for the broader use?
Well, that's, as you said, it's already happening, right? Like Bored Apes Yacht Club is a great example of a very valuable IP that is rewriting the rules of IP management in a way, right? Like it's super permissive. And I think, if I were to speculate, I think we'll see a lot of interesting innovation around those big collections that are already popular, because they are already kind of a gravity center for a lot of attention. They have a lot of meaning behind them. So someone taking a Bored Ape and, let's say, putting like, pride colors on it, or whatever else, like some accessories, some interesting things around it. That collection, by definition, will have more attention than if you just created something from scratch as an unknown artist. So I think there's an interesting dynamic here where derivative artists can remix existing very popular NFT art and get some attention and traction around it if they really add value. If they don't, if they just take Bored Ape and, I don't know, like flip it 180 degrees, it doesn't make any sense, and they don't get traction unless they're trying to scam people. So I think it will start with big collections, and then probably my hope is that external to Web3, traditional brands, IP owners, movie studios and whatnot, will just learn from it and follow the suit. And what we are trying to do is to make sure that those guys do not come in suing everyone like they did like early on with Web2, but instead they come in already understanding the ethos of the community and actually, join in this collaboration cycle.
Let's actually dive deeper here. So what is your advice for traditional IP owners? So what is your advice for Disney, for Marvel, for game studios, for musical artists, for game publishers, for sports teams? Should they open up right away, like full permission for reuse everything in Web3? Should they pick maybe one of their IP properties, or say maybe only like reuse under certain kind of conditions or limits is okay, and then everything else is reserved for now? So how they can experiment with Web3, how they can experiment with a more permissive approach to IP licensing on Web3?
Well, my main advice, do experiment. Do not deny ability to experiment to the community. Of course, like any experimentation requires good data, right? It's not an experiment unless you're measuring it. So in order for that, we exist. Come to us, make sure that we are monitoring your IP, and you have a dashboard that shows how many collections based on your stuff have appeared. And you could start with just observing the ecosystem, and then making some like, easy to fail experiments, like pick a character, pick like a movie franchise or whatever, and announce to community, hey, create a great PFP collection around this new movie franchise. Make sure that you are referring to us in the smart contract. Make sure that you are sharing royalties from it, and see how it goes. Maybe like it goes so well, you help promote this collection. Maybe you actually turn it into the official collection for your franchise, whatnot. Of course, you wouldn't do it on the the most important brand of yours or whatnot. You probably would do it on something secondary, but this is how you experiment. Basically, allow things to happen. You measure them, and that's what we are for. And we have a product exactly for that. And then once you see the results, you try to scale it to maximize impact.
So my understanding is you pick one IP, probably not your flagship IP. You first create a single collection, maybe with like 10 or 100 or like 1,000 artists. They all have like the variation on that kind of IP. And so you just allow them to create within that individual single collection. And if that collection goes well, you either create more collections or you say now those sub-characters or those variations of the characters are subject for further derivative work. And that further derivative work also is permissible.
Yeah, that could be just a way, right? Like I'm just brainstorming here. But like even before that, the first step I would do, and I recommend to every brand we talk to, is like, hey, just come to us, upload your reference materials, and let us show you what's already out there. Like maybe there's
what's already stolen.
What? I don't like this word, right? Like
reused. What's already reused?
People didn't steal those things. They got inspired.
Whom you already inspired. Okay, that's I understand that part. If you have a magic wand and you can invite one traditional IP holder to experiment with like creative reuse on Web3, which one would you invite?
I think I'd invite Marvel. I think there's so much incredible potential with those like decades of creative work that the team, the Marvel team over generations of Marvel team have created. And I think there's incredible opportunity to turn those characters into NFTs, into game characters, and like in a decentralized and open way this time around. But I understand how complex and how this is why it's a pie in the sky kind of dream. I think it's going to take a while before.
Yeah, I think Marvel actually did some NFT experiments, but in a very controlled and self-contained way. I think they have their own mobile app. It's not even part of OpenSea or any other like ERC 721 ecosystem.
But this is exactly why I highlighted that to do it in a decentralized way, right? Like I think there's a huge difference between like any big name saying we're experimenting with decentralization by just creating a team within our team that does something using blockchain technology. That's not what I'm talking about. No, engaging community to do things.
They need to embrace the true Web3.
Which is, hey, we're opening up, go do things. And then a bunch of random flowers bloom and some of them become awesome.
To sum it up, Duplicate is a new company that uses AI to find reuse of existing IP. It starts with cleaning up the NFT marketplace from kind of complete and direct copycat and theft, but the long-term vision is much more positive, is create kind of reimagining an alternative to Content ID, the YouTube system in centralized kind of video space, and provide a system so that every piece of content, every digital asset has its own kind of authenticity ranking or mark, and know where it derives from and whether it has permission to derive from there and whether it shares back some revenue or royalty, the new work. But in generally, it is the overall direction is to encourage collaboration, encourage reuse, encourage more creation of great content where incentives are aligned, everyone is compensated, the original creators still have enough of control, but have enough of a confidence and optimism to allow a further and kind of more creative work based on their original steps.
That's right.
Andrey, any kind of final words on this kind of bright future of Web3 IP?
We want less NFT scam and theft and more great, legit derivative work as a result of collaboration of NFT artists.
Awesome. So thanks everyone watching. This is DAO Heroes, a channel about Web3, its potential to change the future. There are more episodes like this. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. What kind of IP you would like to be open for reuse in near future. And let's hope Andrey will make it happen. Thank you, Andrey.
Thank you, Yura.